You worked at the venture fund straight out of university, and I was like frantically looking for jobs. And I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna apply to some jobs in San Francisco and kind of see what happens.
Without any tech background, you moved from London to San Francisco straight. What drove that decision?
One of the companies, and it's kind of a funny story how it happened. I was in London competing in a hackathon. One of the judges of the hackathon was the founder of a company. They essentially propositioned the founder by the elevator before he was leaving, and he was like, okay, sure. Send me your CV and I'll talk to my co-founder. Then I am brought on as a founder associate for the company. I am then told that the company is moving to San Francisco basically a week later, and you are like coming with us. And I just thought, okay, I wanted to go there anyway. I kind of heard how good it was. This is like a perfect opportunity to do it. So I flew out there with the team.
Today on the podcast, I am excited to have Dillon Roberts, a startup and VC pro with deep experience launching AI ventures and leading growth globally. He's helped build and advise early-stage startups across multiple continents and knows the tech world inside out. Fun fact, Dillon collects chewing gum from every country he visits. So Dillon, I might want to get one from London. So this episode is packed with insights, startup stories, and a few lessons. So let's dive in. Hi Dillon, how are you?
Hey Ryan, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thank you for taking out time for me and for the world. How does it feel?
It's my pleasure, man. Yeah, feels good. Feels good. I'm sat in sunny London, which is a rare thing to say. Whereabouts are you?
Yeah. So everything's good. So how do you feel about this podcast?
It's always exciting,
Right,
sharing the
right.
story, meeting new people, engaging online, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to jump into it.
All right. I love this. I love also meeting new people and connecting and networking, So it's always a good thing.
It's my favorite, man. It's my favorite.
All right. So Dillon, for those who don't know you yet, can you give us a quick rundown of who Dillon actually is, your journey, and who is Dillon?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dillon. I'm 24 years old. I live in London, England. I was born in Manchester, up in the north, and I've worn many hats throughout my short career so far. VC was what I did as soon as I came out of university. So I was a VC investor. Then I moved over into an operational role as a founder's associate and chief of staff in an AI startup in San Francisco. And then I left that job to pursue my own startup ventures, so to speak. So there's been many. I'm sure there'll be many more. And that's kind of bringing me back to the present day.
Awesome. That is good. I actually stumbled upon an Instagram reel in which there was Dillon Roberts, and
Yes.
it was so interesting that I was like, I have to get this guy on my podcast. So yeah. All right now.
Love it.
Dillon, you moved from London to San Francisco, SF, and you quit your job.
I did.
Yeah. So how did you do that? Like you didn't have a tech background. Without any tech background, you moved from London to San Francisco straight. And what drove that decision? How did you do that?
Sure. I think I need to give some pre-context before I jump into
Sure, of course.
why I made that decision and how it went for me. So at the time, I was working for an AI startup in San Francisco. We were trying to automate influencer marketing using AI. I can get into that in more detail later if you like. But
Sure.
I was essentially in an operational role, learning under some really, really cracked founders. And I knew that one day I wanted to do it myself. And that day came around sooner than I expected.
Wow.
So I quit that role and essentially jumped straight into the fire and kind of gave myself no second choice. So that was the kind of pre-context for doing it in the first place. I knew that I wanted to build, and the opportunity came about and I just took it. Now, moving from London to San Francisco, I guess the real kind of rationale behind that decision was that as a startup founder, you want to de-risk as much as you possibly can.
Of course.
Give yourself the optimal chance of success when you're starting a business, especially when it's your first or second or third time. So for me, London is a fantastic ecosystem. Don't get me wrong. There's a huge amount of liquidity here in the early stage. There's a lot of high profile VCs here. There's a lot of tech talent here. But to be honest with you, it's second tier in comparison to San Francisco. To use a football analogy, San Francisco is the Premier League of startups and venture capital. That's where everything happens. AI is being built there. All of these new companies that are appearing are from San Francisco, all being built there. So for me, in order to de-risk as much as possible, it made sense to move from London to San Francisco while I was building. Realistically, surrounding myself with the huge amount of talent and opportunity that exists there felt like the right move.
Right. That is amazing. It's actually so amazing for you to be where you wanted to be. San Francisco is actually the kingdom of the cracked coders, the programmers, the tech, the CEOs and founders. It's actually really amazing. And one of my dreams is to
It's
be
the best.
in SF as well, just like you.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you will, Ryan. One day
One
soon,
day, one day.
inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah, man. You know it. Inshallah. All right.
Of course, man. Yeah.
All right. So, the reel was about you quit your job and moved from London to SF, and you started building game applications. So, you taught yourself to code, and by making mobile games like gaming apps every single day. So, what did that teach you? And like, how did you come up with that idea to start building gaming apps specifically?
Sure, sure. So again, some pre-context there. I flew from London to San Francisco, and I really had no plan. I had a loose plan or an idea of a plan, to borrow from Donald Trump, with regards to building. I knew that I wanted to build. I didn't know what it was. And my plan was essentially go to San Francisco, have a bunch of meetings in the first week when I first arrive. And the plan will kind of form around that. I'll meet interesting people. My attention will be pulled in this direction and that direction. And ultimately, I'll find something to work on over the
Right.
course of the next 3 months, which is the longest I could say on my tourist visa. One of those meetings was with the GP of a fund. They're an early stage venture fund writing, 250K plus checks into seed, pre-seed stage startup founders in San Francisco, and had a meeting with the GP there. And after that meeting, he essentially said, look, we're hosting this accelerator program. It's called Ship It. It's 1 month long. Why don't you come up and build? So I pitched him a bunch of different fintech ideas that I've been working on and kind of ideating on in the background. And every single one, he was like, yeah, we don't really invest in fintech. We're more kind of AI, ML, Web3, gaming, hardware, that kind of thing. Not really fintech. So for me, that was like, okay, I'm going to have to do something that's like completely out of my comfort zone, something that I've never done before. And for me, I didn't really have that much technical background beforehand. I studied economics and politics at university. I'm not a CS grad or anything like that. So I was lacking on the technical side of being a founder. That was a key kind of weakness that I could see in myself and my skill set. So I wanted to use this program as a forcing function to get better at that. And I thought, what's the most fun way I can learn to code and get more technical, leveraging AI tools, that kind of thing. And for me, that was building mobile games. So I set myself the challenge of essentially building mobile games every single day for the entire Ship It cohort program and just seeing where I got to. And it was an exploratory process, really starting from zero. At that point, I'd never written a line of code before. I'd never opened a GitHub repo before. All of these things that are so normal now were just completely alien to me and actually quite intimidating at the time. So it really was just me trying to push myself as hard as possible, realizing that I would be in an environment where I'm surrounded by incredibly talented individuals. How can I kind of leverage that to the best of my capabilities and benefit myself in the long term? And for me, that was definitely learning how to code, and then mobile games as an extension of that.
Awesome, awesome. I love that. I love the story. All right, so you've been to SF. How has living in SF shaped your mindset, or let's say the approach to building startups or mobile apps, gaming apps? Like, what's something unique about the ecosystem there?
Got you. Okay. There was a second part of your question earlier that I didn't get to either, which was what did I learn through going through the process of
Yeah,
building?
yeah.
For me, there were so many different things. I think, to be honest with you, it was it's very difficult to learn a new skill, but in reality, if you're dedicated and you surround yourself with people who are motivating and motivate you, then you can kind of achieve whatever you want. Is really the unlock that I got from that experience. I came into that program with no experience, and I came out of it with 15 mobile games, some of them relatively successful, and a bunch of new friends along the way as well. So I think just understanding that whatever you set your limitations in your mind, you can always extend those, and being surrounded by people who are ambitious and pushing you allows you to like reach things that seem impossible, I guess is the way that I would put it. Now, to come on to your question, what is specifically unique about the San Francisco ecosystem? I would say there's a lot of things, but the primary one is just the density of talent and density of opportunity. Maybe I can give you some context there as well.
Sure.
In London, for example, we have a fantastic ecosystem here. Like I said, on the investor side, on the founder side, we have top tier talent on both sides, top tier VC funds operating in this region. But what we don't have is this kind of culture of serendipity where people are very open and honest and willing to help each other. It feels like a lot of deals in the UK happen behind closed doors, for example. You're not going to go to an event on a Thursday night and run into the founder of Revolut or the founder of Go Cardless or anything like that, or these kind of top tier companies that have been built in the UK or were founded in the UK. You're not going to meet these founders. They're not just going to be knocking around at different events. Whereas in San Francisco, that really happens. There's more buy-in into the ecosystem. Therefore, you meet more interesting people and people are more accessible to you as someone who's really done nothing. If I look at my track record, I shouldn't be in the same room as the CEO of Superbase, but that's possible in San Francisco. And I get to have conversations with these founders because of the ecosystem and I guess people's willingness to engage with it. Maybe that's on a deeper level. If I was to kind of analyze that, it could be to do with general optimism that exists in the US, and then I guess more specifically in California. Historically, a lot of different things have happened there. There's been a lot of breakthroughs. Mark Zuckerberg comes in as an 18-year-old and creates Facebook and completely revolutionizes social media and creates this whole new paradigm of engagement for people to interact online. That sort of thing happens in San Francisco and has happened before. Therefore, I think people are more open and willing to underwrite kind of ragtag people who turn up with cool ideas and just kind of see what happens and back them and see what happens. And that's really exciting. Whereas in the UK, if you come in with a bold idea and you try and pitch for investment, you're not really going to get the same response as you do in San Francisco. In San Francisco, it's, oh, that's incredible. How can I help you? In London, it's, why would you spend your time on that? That sounds kind of risky, or maybe that's not the best use of your time. All of these different things come up where people get stuck. They can't understand or comprehend why you would work on such a crazy idea. And that's one of the key differences, I would say, is that general mindset of optimism versus pessimism, and then just the general talent, the density of talent and density of opportunity that exists there.
Awesome. I love it. SF is actually so different, if you compare SF to any other country or city. It's basically like the diversity, everything is so different there. People are like making apps every single day, just like you did. So it's like a completely different, state. So people, it's like so fast paced, actually. So yeah.
It really is. That's another thing as well. I think you understand what operating with speed looks like once you've been there for a while. I came there thinking that I'm a hard worker. I get my work done. I push myself to move faster. But in reality, when you see people around you moving, 2 to 3 times faster than what you were moving before, it really opens your mind to the possibilities of what you're capable of and makes you reflect, how can I optimize to be more like that person and operate in a more efficient way? So it's great. Like the whole environment just pushes you to be a better founder and a better person as well, so long as you surround yourself with the right people.
Right. That is amazing. Because if you see people around you that are building apps and achieving their goals, you're like, why am I not doing that? I should also do that. I should also compete. And I should be at the top, So yeah, that is,
Yeah,
I believe,
Like,
one of the
like I
things.
said, it's the
Yeah.
kind of Champions League of startups. It's the place to be where all the top talent is. If you want to win against the best in the world, you go to San Francisco. It's as simple as that. If you go anywhere else, then what's the point? You win in the US, you win in San Francisco, you win around the world, and that's just the be all and end all. That's the kind of pull as an ambitious person to go there in the first place. So I completely agree with you there. I also think that, well, yeah, that's basically it.
Sure. All right. So amazing. You've been both an investor and a founder, a VC and a founder. So how was your experience being both, and what's the biggest mindset shift that between the two, the VC and the founder?
Really good question. I think the kind of primary differences are when you're an investor, you're following a relatively well-structured playbook. You have a mandate of investment. You know which sectors you're targeting. You know what size of companies you're targeting, the check size that you're writing, and the type of businesses that you're underwriting. All of this stuff is kind of set in stone in the beginning. So it reduces the ambiguity with regards to how you have to operate. Then if you think about the investment process itself, it's a very structured, rigorous process from start to finish, which involves meeting with founders, doing due diligence on the company, hosting an investment committee meeting, and then ultimately kind of making an investment decision. And that process is relatively similar across all businesses, irrespective of whether they're in different sectors or not. So I guess that the point that I'm trying to get to here is the processes are very structured, and it's a fantastic environment to learn the fundamentals of what makes a good business on paper. You learn benchmark metrics for what a company should be hitting at a seed or a Series A. You understand what operational excellence looks like in terms of founders setting an objective and then working towards meeting that objective. Do they do that? Do they fall short? Do they go up and above and beyond? So there's that part of it, the more analytical rigor part of it, which is very, very structured, which is fantastic. there's also, I guess, kind of meeting a lot of people every single day, a lot of cool people that are building. You get that personal touch. You understand what are the right questions to ask founders. How do you become more personable to get the most out of meetings, that kind of thing. Maybe that's a more holistic skill set that you get from that experience. But then you kind of compare all of that, wrap that up in a bow and compare that to the founder experience. And it is completely different. This process is very structured. It's all about curation of a portfolio. You're trying to optimize for your returns for your investors. Basically, that's your ultimate objective here. Irrespective of how you do that, that's the ultimate objective. On this side of things, you are doing 100 different things at once. You're putting out fires every single day. You're code switching between different parts of the business with problems in it that you have to solve, and you're really kind of creating something, going from 0 to 1 in a way that you're just not as an investor. As an investor, sure, you can argue that you build a portfolio over time, but in reality it's all curation. You're curating a portfolio with that long-term objective in mind of getting returns for your LPs. As a founder, you're not doing that. You're not curating. You're really creating. You're building new processes. You're figuring out how to get shit done in an environment where no one else has done it before, most likely. And if someone's already done it, then you're learning how to do it better and more efficient. And all of these things really require like a different framework for thinking, very much first principles thinking, very much on the ground, scrappy. How can we solve problems? And I think those two mindsets are very different. One of them is much more structured. The other one is much more creative and allows you to be more creative as well.
Right. Awesome. Right. All right. So you've onboarded 25 indie devs in a week at Vibe Hub. So how did you manage that, and what's your secret to connecting with developers?
Cool thing. So some pre-context there. I was building mobile games as part of the accelerator program that I was in San Francisco. And something that I noticed during that time was that the concept of vibe coding mobile games and web-based games was really getting more popular on X. So I saw this and really couldn't find a centralized platform where people could play all of the vibe coded games that were being created, Levels.io being the kind of primary leader of this movement online. So I went about creating one, using the technical capabilities that I learned over the course of the program, using Cursor, that kind of thing, building what's like a source of truth essentially for vibe coded games on the internet. Think of it like a mini clip type website or a cool maths games type website, but specifically for vibe coded games. And I essentially put that out there and then used X almost exclusively to get users for the platform. So essentially what developers could do is they could come onto the platform, upload their games, and then other people could play them and rank them and rate them, that kind of thing. So I went on to X after I created the platform, and I just started pushing it. I would engage with people who were prevalent in the community, the likes of Levels.io, other indie developers like him, really trying to, one, get them onto the platform, and then two, get them to post about it. So I'm essentially their reply guy for like a week and a half, just really kind of chirping, getting people on board, speaking to a bunch of different people. Anyone who's hashtag vibe coding on X, I was probably in their DMs chatting to them. And the idea was basically just like go straight to the customer base and say, hey, look, I'm building this holistic kind of source of truth for vibe coded games on the internet. I would love it if you could upload your game onto the platform. And even in the beginning, to be honest with you, I was uploading other people's games on their behalf and then crediting them and saying, hey, look, I've just uploaded your game onto this platform. It's already getting this amount of plays. Why don't you upload some of your other projects on here as well? And that's kind of how the snowball started. So it was very much kind of doing things that don't scale, sometimes even just onboarding people without them asking and telling them that I'd done it afterwards, kind of asking for forgiveness, not permission kind of vibe.
Awesome, that is great. So you have a really intriguing line on your LinkedIn bio, which is like you're working on a tool to help people quit gambling. What inspired that, and like what kind of change are you hoping it brings?
Good question. So I was having a conversation with some of the friends I met in San Francisco about sports betting. And what I realized was sports betting has only been legal in the US since 2018. And to me, that kind of blew my mind, right? As an English person, sports betting has been legal since 1960. So, like 60 years almost. Regulation was kind of reduced somewhat in 2000, explosion in the industry. But even then, it's been around for 20 years, 2 decades. That's a long time for things to develop, companies to appear, incumbents to appear, regulation to be increased, that kind of thing. Whereas in the US, it's a relatively nascent industry, 5 years old. There are some larger players, of course, the likes of DraftKings, this kind of thing. But in reality, it's relatively kind of a Wild West market. Crypto gambling, for example, these kind of firms can advertise on social media in a way that for incumbent firms in the UK just can't, which is a much more developed ecosystem in the UK in comparison to the US. And for me, I was kind of seeing this, and I really thought there was an opportunity to provide help to people who will probably at some point get addicted to gambling. How many college age students are there out there betting on sports who don't want to admit that they have a problem, but at some point might lose more money than they can afford. And then they might really need services like this. And in reality, the services industry for this kind of thing in America is just so fragmented or non-existent in the first place. So for me, I was thinking, okay, what's a relatively low barrier to entry way in which I can help these people and provide them a real service to help them get over the addiction and help with the addiction in the first place. So for me, that was creating a consumer app that can help them get over their gambling addiction, basically. Now, I can go into detail as to what that looks like, but I think it's a relatively good way of reaching the customer base insofar as 12-step programs like Gamblers Anonymous, for example, they're very shame driven. They're in person as well, which makes it more difficult for people to get motivated to go there. It takes a real buy-in from the user to go down that route. And I think this is a more low touch, but also more effective route to reach the kind of Gen Z consumer who will ultimately go through this kind of gambling addiction process if the market continues as it is now.
Awesome. That is great. That is great. So let's move on to the last question, which I always ask to whoever I get, to whoever person I get on a podcast, which is, what is that one piece of advice you would give to the younger generation that are coming up in this, either like they don't have really a tech background, just like you, or they want to pursue a tech career. So, what one piece of advice do you have for them that would help them take their first step?
That's a great question, Ryan. For me, I think one piece of advice I would give would just be start by starting. That's like a phrase that I heard a bunch of different times, and I really do think it's true. What does it mean? It's essentially, okay, you can talk about something as much as you want, but in reality, the only way you're going to make progress and learn is by actually starting the project. For me, it's mobile games, it's learning how to code, that kind of thing. The amount of times, Ryan, beforehand, where I said, oh, I need to get more technical. I know it's important and it'll be useful in the long term. I'm going to start next week. And I would kind of just push it down the line consistently to the point where I didn't learn how to code. I needed a environment that acted as a forcing function for me to start that and then learn. Hence the accelerator program in San Francisco. But in reality, I think anyone can create that incentive mechanism to get them to start. And then once you start, you're making way more progress than everybody else. And then after that, it's just an incremental learning journey that you go on, really. So I would say just start by starting, take that first step, even if it's terrible. Your first version, my first mobile game, for example, was absolutely terrible. Nobody played it, but it's that first step that allows you to get to a point where people will play your games or whatever kind of other vertical you're doing. People will use your products. So really taking that first step is super important. And the sooner you do that, the quicker you're going to learn. The quicker you learn, the faster you're going to get to your overall objective.
Awesome. That is so good. That is so good. All right. So I would say, for me personally, I would say to the people that they should learn how to learn. They should, do learning. They should learn actually how to learn, because people in this century, they don't really learn as they used to, because in the world of ChatGPT and DeepSeek and Claude and these AI tools, they are kind of forgetting and like how to learn stuff. Actually, they're just getting their task done by just typing the prompts and stuff. So they should learn how to learn. That is, I think, what matters. And one more thing that I would like to say is, which is one piece of advice from my side. It goes like, what a man has done, a man can do. It's actually really deep if you think about it. So anything that a man has done, you can do that too. You don't have to think about if you cannot. You just have to take that step, as Dillon just said, that you have to start building. You have to you have to take that step. So also, it's better to build 100 ugly projects
than just sitting and working on that one single project. You just have to get your task done. Just make that project. You'll learn so much from that. No tutorial, I believe, could help you. It's just you have to start. You just have to start. So I think that is one piece of advice from my side, and I hope people would take steps in order to implement this in their lives as well. So yeah, how do you like it?
Love it,
Do you
Ryan.
like it?
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, when I think back to when I was starting to build mobile games, for example, the times that I learned the most was when somebody was playing the game. Sure, I can kind of think about building it, and in reality, I get it to a point where I think it's perfect, and nobody's going to have a problem with it. And then you see someone playing it in their hand on their phone, and immediately you're coming away with 10 different notes on how to improve it, and that happens in every single conversation that you have. So I think start by starting gets you to that point quicker, and it just kind of speeds up your velocity. Your velocity just increases in terms of how quickly you're learning, how quickly you're improving, and how much better you can make the customer experience in such a short period of time. So I completely agree with you.
All right, that is really good. All right, so Dillon Roberts, thank you so much for giving me time out of. I know you're busy, but thank you so much for giving time and coming onto this podcast to record and share your story, which is really interesting to the people, to the world. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to my channel and more super exciting conversations are on the way, so stay tuned. By the way, Dylan, where's my chewing gum?